I had blamed the world for my problems. I wasn't writing, and I felt sad about that. I was depressed and bored. I didn't have a belief in myself anymore. All you do is pick yourself apart rather than find ways out. So my confidence completely went. I was having arguments with the walls. I didn't really know who I was. I felt lost and angry. It was an absolute bloody nightmare. I take creativity now for granted, and I always have done since I was a child. I think that one of the things that you do when you grow up is that you assume that everyone else has just about the same sort of view of the world and same capabilities as yourself. It was fascinating to be at a point where the creativity that I'd taken totally for granted was no longer at my beck and call. And I think that was a shock. An absolute shock to the system, and I didn't really know who I was, and I was bloody angry. The writer's block came from an argument with a girlfriend. I was living a very unwise life when I was at university, and I was not very focused in my life. And I was going out with a girl, and basically I absolutely adored her. And I made some bad choices because she was the wrong person to adore. And she started criticising my work one time and just basically told me the whole load of it was just a load of rubbish. And then she left. And so the final things that I had sort of going on in my head with her was her criticism of my work. And every time I wrote thereafter, I would be starting to write a sentence, put a sentence together, and I would just think, would she approve of this? Is this any good? And it got to the point where I couldn't put a word on the page without doubting it. I didn't believe that what I had to say was important, interesting, and good enough. That was essentially the reality of it. I didn't feel that I was good enough, and therefore why should I be writing stuff and putting stuff up in front of other people? And actually, you know, it's a mistake to think that. We're all good enough. Everyone is good enough to be doing and being who they are. But it's a terrible cycle to get into, because you know what happens is that in that cycle it becomes self-fulfilling, because you think you're not good enough, and then you do things and you criticise them and you find the mistakes in them, and that proves that you're not good enough, and that then undermines your confidence further, so that the next time that you try to do something you're already starting from a lower point, and so your work isn't good enough, and so on. So yeah, I mean it was a descent into complete and utter lack of self-belief. I got so angry with my life that I first of all thought that I needed to get de-stressed, so I started doing Tai Chi. Then having done Tai Chi, I could see that these were kind of, you know, these movements could be used to hurt people, which seemed to me to be quite a good idea at the time, since I was so angry with my life. I then did kickboxing, and with the kickboxing, to cut a long story short, I got subdural hematoma. I got punched in the head very hard and got a brain injury, and I was basically out of action for about 6 months. And I thought about this, and I just thought, well, I've got to find a better way to communicate. And at that time, I was seeing on the TV a load of stuff by Derren Brown. A lot of what Derren does is NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So then I started looking for someone who would teach NLP. I did my checks, and the big NLP trainer at the time was Paul McKenna, and his trainer, Richard Bandler, who was one of the co-creators of NLP. So I went on the training course. On my 40th birthday, he was demonstrating a particular hypnotic induction, and something went ping in my head. I recognised that thing that he was showing could be really, really useful to me. And I went up to him in the break and I said, Paul, can that hypnotic induction you've just shown be used for writer's block? Because I've had writer's block for the last 13 years. It's been a nightmare. He took me through a series of mental exercises, and those mental exercises, one got rid of the block that I had, because at the back of my mind all the time was this girl who criticised all my work, and she had undermined my confidence. And he got rid of that. He then started to get me to separate out my critical faculties from my creative faculties, from my, I don't know what you call it, the kind of middleman, who's the guy who tidies up but isn't a critical, and actually have three different personae who I could kind of go into to do different things. So when I'm being creative, I'm in that in big creative mode. I'm in the creative room, and when I'm tidying up, I'm in the tidy up room. And when I'm being hyper analytical and critical, I'm in a completely different place in my head. And he got me to recognise those things. But then what he did was he started to ramp up the creativity. He said, turn it up, and there are various exercises that he did there. So yeah, and I was out of my head after that for about, I mean, I wept so much. It was just the most extraordinary, such a release of all this pent-up grief and anguish and wasted years. That's what it felt like after all this time. And then for about 3 days afterwards, I was out of my head, just completely tranced out. I can remember walking down Kensington High Street, and the colours were brighter than they'd ever been before. The sounds were louder. I didn't know how to filter anything anymore. It's just the most extraordinary thing. And then that settled down after about 2 or 3 days, and suddenly the writing switched on. It was like I could just create. I can remember there were times later, I would be with my girlfriend at the time, and I'd be in bed, and I'd wake up with an idea at 3 in the morning, and I had a deal on with her that I could write in bed. Get the laptop, pop, 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 pop. I can remember one morning, the laptop screen was so bright that I was just like this. Now she got up to go to the loo, she came back from the loo and saw me like, with my eyes closed, typing away, and she just came and went, "You've got to be kidding," and got back into bed. But I mean, it was like that. It was just the most extraordinary thing. I couldn't stop creating. That settled down after about 6 months, and now I've been writing ever since. Basically, that's what I do now. You know. So yeah, it works. So thanks, Paul McKenna. Basically, yeah.